Assange reaches a plea deal in which we finally get to come back out and say he can leave the embassy for the first time in, God, I don't know how long has it been, 9 years, 10 years. We're going to talk about what's happening there, what happens with that, and where we go with that. In other news, the state of Louisiana has allowed the 10 Commandments to be posted inside of public schools. We're going to go over what that is, what that actually means, including looking at the evils of the government and activism groups and what it is that they do, and where we go from here. Debate night is coming up on Thursday, and that will stream, if you're watching on Twitch at least, and Rumble, on the very channel that you're probably watching on. It will not be going on CNN, or I'm sorry, on YouTube. It will be going on CNN. CNN has announced that they will be doing takedowns of any channel streaming and running commentary on the debate, but they don't watch Twitch and they don't watch Rumble, and Rumble is actively supporting, but we'll be talking about what's coming up in the debate and the fact that, yes, you can watch that right here. That's going to be one of the bigger stories coming off of this. And Donald Trump drops $500 at a Philly cheesesteak restaurant to promote his proposal of eliminating the income tax on tips. It is going to be all of this and more on our returning to our regular night now that training is over with work and now that I can feasibly be here at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday. Apologies for being late today, of course. We'll talk about that on the other side of the title card. So strap yourselves in, find some friends, and we will see you over here when we talk about the news on the other side of the title card. And I never thought it would be so simple, but I found a way. And I always thought it'd be too crazy, but I found a way. If you open up your mind, see what's inside. It's going to take some time to realign, but if you look inside, I'm sure you'll find, over your shoulder, you know that I told you, I'll always be picking you up when you're down. So just turn around. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. You know, one of the nice parts about giving my stream off to a series of people who are mostly traditional conservative is the fact that I can say the words family comes first and everybody will understand. And the vast majority of people who are listening to this speech right now are also listening probably on a replay, because I get way more views out on the replays, both on audio and video, than I do coming up off the live stream, especially on the YouTube side. I know it was a little bit funny though too. Somebody come in and tried to insult me today because he didn't like what I had to say about the welfare state over on X. So he went through my YouTube channel. He went back 2 months to find a video that only got 1 view, so he could take a screenshot and say, "Oh, you'll get that second view soon." Now, most of the time on the average, I have 5 to 7 for the replays, and about 10 to 12 on the audio platform. So, by the way, thank you guys for that. That is awesome. But, yeah, I can come out and say, yeah, family comes first, and we have to deal with what's going with family before I do anything else. And every single one of you will understand. And you guys fucking rock for that. Anyway, we got a ton of stuff to go over here today. It didn't look like it was going to be this much, but, you know, as I kept going and kept finding stuff as I was going, like, I added one more tab while we were on the title card, because the documents thing popped up today, and the Krappensteins are actually trying to do a promotion and try to force the idea that Trump was on the Epstein flight logs. It's just, nobody's buying it right now, so nobody's talking about that kind of stuff. Anyway, we got a lot of stuff to go over here today, so strap yourselves in, find some friends, and of course, we only grow by word of mouth. And let's get into the news today. Announcement, and we'll talk about this more because I'm not going to talk about the debate on the top of the channel, on the top of the stream rather. But, you know, for people who can only get through the first half hour of the replay or whatnot, I want you guys to be able to participate in this too. I am streaming the debate, but due to what I've heard today, it will not go to YouTube. We're not going to do that, because CNN is going hard on this because they know. They're trying to control the narrative. I get it. It's part of the reason they're not having an audience, and, you know, it's all going to be pre-taped and pre-selected questions and everything else off of this. So I get why they're doing it, but we do have ways around this, and I'm actually going to lead with this. And this same X is going to be up when we go live. I'll check in with the live chat here in just a moment, but I wanted to start with this one here. So we'll pull this up on here. Liberty Doll. And this is one of those that I found while the intro music was playing, actually. Liberty Doll, who is at the Liberty Doll on X, says, update, Thursday's stream is canceled. At CNN has announced they'll be doing takedowns of any channel streaming and running commentary on the debate. And at YouTube is on board with this, which means that YouTube will rat anybody out who is running commentary on the debate, who is not a mainstream network, because like Fox 6 Milwaukee is not going to get hit for this. I can tell you that right off the bat. Could result in copyright strikes and full-out channel suspensions. Unfortunately, I don't have the resources to fight it, even though this is a clear abuse of power and at its core is totally illegal to censor a presidential debate. Now, I X'd back at Liberty Doll and said, I'm doing mine on Twitch/Rumble, and asked, do you want to sit in with me? A complete stranger, but also a former Mass person, because, funny story, Liberty Doll and I actually both used to live in Massachusetts, but I didn't know that until long, long after I moved out of Massachusetts, because I didn't start going down into this field until long, long after I lived in Massachusetts. I was still believing the mainstream news in 2008 when I left that godforsaken state. But if you have an X account and you want to reach out to Liberty Doll and say, hey, get on board with J. Edgar. He will run all the tech. He will make it all look good. Go on to his channel. He'll make everything good. That is at the Liberty Doll over on X. Go at her and say, hey, do this. That'd be very much appreciated. But yes, that is also the announcement that's coming with that, is we are not doing that on this channel either. I'm going to do it on Twitch, I'm going to do it on Rumble, but nope, no YouTube. It's not going to happen. Because I also don't have a strike to spare. So, you guys can go do that. Let's check in the live chat. I've got Palm as first. Mogwai is here as last. Mogwai says he can leave his room for the first time in 9 years, or as my stepson calls it, gaming on PlayStation 5. We do Switch in this house. Funny story, and I talked to Brew on this one when I was still co-hosting with Brew, and pointed out that until, like, Palm, was it like the week before I met you, or was it a couple weeks before I met you? But I only, like, just got a Switch for the first time and bought a new, or it's not new, I bought it used, but a current generation console for the first time since 2003 when I bought my PS2. Yeah, I have not had a new console since then. Now I've done PC updates, and I can handle most modern PC games at this point, even with my sort of moderate level PC that I have because, well, I built it at the most expensive time to build a PC, but I can do PC stuff. But my Switch, yeah, that is like for the first time in my life, only a couple months ago. So I've never experienced the PS5 gaming. I don't think Palm would stick with me if I stayed in my basement for 5 years. Or 9 years. Mogwai says, is it just me or does J. Edgar's hair make it look like he has devil horns? Yeah, they're wrapped up a little bit over on the outside. I legitimately just took a shower, and a cold shower, unfortunately. Like right before I started organizing the news. I tried to make it the best that I could do, but yeah, it's flipping up there. I do have naturally curly hair, and it's getting to that length, so we have that going on here. Mogwai says, Lindsay, that's not what he means by word of mouth. Was it? It was Easter weekend, wasn't it? It might have been, which was right before you and I met, so we have that. All right, anyway, getting into the main news of the day, now that we've got that announcement done and taken care of, we are going to start with the Julian Assange story. From the Associated Press, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange will plead guilty and deal with U.S. and be freed from prison on a bullshit charge, I might add. Palm says, I'm with you because you don't spend time in your basement. If we get the place we're looking at, I'm probably going to spend a lot more time in the basement. Because the garage is attached to the basement, and, well, we've had this discussion off the camera before. This is Alana Durkin Richer and Eric Tucker. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange will plead guilty to a felony charge in a deal with the U.S. Justice Department that will allow him to walk free and resolve a long-running legal saga that spanned multiple continents and centered on the publication of a trove of classified documents. Assange left a British prison on Monday and will appear later this week in the U.S. federal court in the Northern Mariana Islands, a U.S. Commonwealth in the Western Pacific. He is expected to plead guilty to an Espionage Act charge of conspiring to unlawfully obtain or disseminate classified national defense information, the DOJ said in a letter filed in court. Well, no, that's actually political persecution. Not obtaining and disseminating classified national defense information. The guilty plea, which must be approved by a judge, brings an abrupt conclusion to a criminal case of international intrigue and to the U.S. government's years-long pursuit of a publisher whose hugely popular secret-sharing website made him the cause célèbre among many press freedom advocates who said that he acted as a journalist to expose U.S. military wrongdoing. Investigators, by contrast, have repeatedly asserted that his actions broke laws meant to protect sensitive information and put the country's national security at risk. He is expected to return to his home country of Australia after his plea and sentencing, which is scheduled for Wednesday morning local time in Saipan, the largest island in the Northern Mariana Islands. The hearing is to take place there because Assange's opposition to traveling to the continental U.S. and the court's proximity to Australia, prosecutors said. Yeah, I hate to tell you this, but if he comes into this country, he is going to be Clinton-sided fairly quickly. Attorneys for Assange should immediately respond to a request for comment on Monday, which is, for court standards, probably a very good thing. In a statement posted on X, WikiLeaks said Assange boarded a plane and departed the UK on Monday after leaving the British prison, where he spent the last 5 years. WikiLeaks applauded the announcement of the deal, saying he was grateful for all who stood by us, fought for us, and remained utterly committed in the fight for his freedom. WikiLeaks published groundbreaking stories of government corruption and human rights abuses, holding the powerful accountable for their actions. As editor-in-chief, Julian paid severely for these principles and for the people's right to know, WikiLeaks said. So, as editor of WikiLeaks, one of the things that bothers me about this is, and I actually never went on WikiLeaks, even when it was still popular. I don't follow them, because pretty much anything that they're going to put out is going to be put out also by both the Daily Wire and CNN, each with their own spin on it, and I can play it off of each other and not have my IP associated with that, because I'm sure with how much I say the government sucks, the government is looking for a reason to come and smash my door down and say, you're looking for classified information. But with that being said, I mean, if it's like any other wiki, my understanding is that people just go in and post the stuff and can go back and edit it. I mean, that's how Wikipedia works, and that's like when we do the rules of acquisition. That's from Memory Beta, which is another fandom wiki for Star Trek and beta canon items of Star Trek. And people just go in and add that. I mean, there's editorial process, and some things can get approved or denied from there, but I mean, for the most part, what do you do as an editor for something like that, especially if it's got leaks? Do you verify it for any sort of, I don't know, veracity? But it's classified, so you wouldn't be able to. So I don't know what you would do as an editor. That kind of blows my mind on that. The deal ensures that Assange will admit guilt while also sparing him from any additional prison time. He'd spent years hiding out in an Ecuadorian embassy in London after Swedish authorities saw his arrest on rape allegations before being locked up in the UK. And of course they were seeking him on that because I'm sure that somebody was paid to come forward and say, he diddled me. Come and lock him up. Stop supporting this man. But he is going to walk free. What is he going to do after that? I don't think he makes it too long. Honestly, I don't. I think Mogwai got the script for when Hillary Clinton gets close to Julian Assange. Julian, hey buddy, I got this rope. I need you to see if it is head size or not. Yes, head size. Oh, it's too high? Here's a stool. Be careful, the legs rock. The DOJ's indictment, unsealed in 2019, accused Assange of encouraging and helping Chelsea Manning to steal diplomatic cables and military files that WikiLeaks published in 2010. Prosecutors had accused Assange of damaging national security by publishing documents that harmed the U.S. and its allies and aided its adversaries. And by the way, Manning is also walking free and running for Congress. Prosecutors said in charging document filed in connection with the plea agreement that Assange conspired with Manning to receive and obtain documents, notes, and other writings related to the national defense, and to willfully communicate those records. The document takes care to note that Assange was not a U.S. citizen, did not possess U.S. security clearance, and did not have authorization to possess, access, or control documents, writings, or notes relating to the national defense of the United States, including classified information. So, that is what we have there. Now, with this, some of this is going to be for show. The Biden DOJ is going to do this, number one, to try to snub Trump with the Libertarian Party, which he is very popular among right now. I mean, you've got the core left-leaning libertarians that follow Chase Oliver, but the vast majority of the LP right now, especially under the Mises caucus, is Team Trump. And something like this is going to damage that, because Trump was all in on coming and prosecuting Julian Assange. Unfortunately, the documents that Manning leaked made Trump look bad. And also, given the fact that now we're starting to have more dissemination of, oh my god, this is what happened in the Trump classified documents case. As we're starting to find out that Trump was framed for the classified documents case, well, it's going to look good on the Biden DOJ record to finish out a case about classified documents. So there are multiple prongs to this, and none of this is good for people who want to disseminate information that the public should know about the government that wants to put its boot on their necks. From ABC News, believed to be carrying Assange lands in Thailand. From Kevin Shelby and Guy Davies. Excuse me. A plane believed to be carrying Julian Assange landed on Tuesday in Bangkok. Every time I see that name. Now, when I was in high school, and keep in mind that I grew up in a small town. And while I knew where to get the drugs in that town, not everybody did. So a lot of them were not yet introduced to the kinds of things and terminology until very, very later in life, like into their college and mid-20s. We were discussing in, I think it was 2001, there was a controversy. We were in our social problems class talking about a controversy in the school where a teen girl was told to either turn her shirt inside out or put something on over it, or take the shirt that she was wearing off and then put something on from the lost and found bin, pick your poison, do any of the above, because her shirt said Billabong, because that was a big brand at the time. Australian surfing apparel was very big in 2001. And God bless the kid in my class, Matt, who thought that that was a sexual reference, because his immediate next quip was, I don't know why. I mean, it's clearly not what people think it is. And I mean, I could walk in here with a shirt that says Bangkok in there, and would they do the same thing? I remember that to this day. 23 years ago. Mog says, genius, he's going back to Australia. Every animal in that country wants to kill you. A poisoning? Nope, it was a snake or a spider bite. Cement shoes? Nope. Shark attack with no traces left. Fucking genius. How small was it? My school was so small. You know how, like, in Kenosha, you have 3 schools to all service one city? And people consider Kenosha to be a small town. 100,000 people consider it to be a small town. 3 high schools to service one city, plus all the private schools that are around there. My school was so small that we serviced 7 different communities. And many of us had to commute, sometimes 15 miles. That's how small our school was. The WikiLeaks founder was photographed boarding a private plane in the UK after he reached a deal with persecutors in the US to plead guilty to a single felony count. Assange is expected to stop in Thailand before traveling on to the Northern Mariana Islands, where he's expected to plead guilty in a US federal court. He is then expected to continue on to his native Australia. I wonder if he's going to go to the Northern Territory. Assange has been accused by the United States of conspiring with Chelsea Manning, who is an intelligence analyst in the U.S. Army, leaked to Assange hundreds of thousands of classified documents, including 250,000 U.S. Department of State cables. WikiLeaks began publishing those documents in 2010. Julian Assange is free, WikiLeaks said in a statement posted to social media early on Tuesday. Well, we'll see how long he makes it. So that is where he is at. Alright, we're going to move on to a different controversy right now from BNO News. Just in, Louisiana becomes the first U.S. state to require the 10 Commandments be posted in the classrooms. And in the law. And they cropped that fairly tightly. Which means that you won't see the line that says that it's optional. They're permitted to, they're not required to. The text shall read as follows, the 10 Commandments. I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make to thyself graven images. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor thy father and mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which is the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his cattle, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. So I have not read the full text of this bill. Actually, let me see if I can find this. Because I'm curious at this point. House Bill 71. Usually when I see something that close cropped, there's something else hidden in there that's the people who are complaining about this don't want you to see. There's all our roll calls, our subjects, roll calls. Where's the text? I want the text. Text. There we go. Chaptered. This will be the latest one. 6 pages. To enact, relative to the public elementary, secondary, and post-secondary schools, to provide for the display of certain historical documents, to provide for the display of the Mayflower Compact, the Declaration of Independence, the Northwest Ordinance, the Ten Commandments, to provide for displays in each classroom, to provide relative to the use of donations or the acceptance of donated displays for this purpose, to provide for the applicability, to provide for legislative intent, to provide for historical context, to provide for an effective date, and to provide for related matters. The legislator finds and declares as the following. In 05, the Supreme Court recognized that it's permissible to display the Ten Commandments on government property in Van Orden versus Perry. In 06, the legislature enacted Act number 602 of the 06 regular session of the legislature, provided for the Secretary of State to publish the Ten Commandments and other historically significant documents for posting in courthouses and other public buildings to address the need to educate and inform the public as to the history and background of the American and Louisiana law. In 2019, the Supreme Court further recognized that the Ten Commandments have historical significance as one of the foundations of our legal system in American Legion versus American Humanist Association. And the court also ruled the displaying of the Ten Commandments on public property may have multiple purposes, such as historical significance and representing common cultural heritage. Recognizing the historical role of the Ten Commandments accords with our nation's history and faithfully reflects the understanding of the founders of our nation with respect to the necessity of civic morality and to a functional self-government. History records that James Madison, the 4th President of the United States, stated that we have staked our whole future of our new nation upon the capacity of each of ourselves to govern ourselves according to the moral principles of the Ten Commandments. Including the Ten Commandments in the history of our children is part of our state and national history, culture, and tradition. The text of the Ten Commandments set forth in subsection B of this section is identical to the text of the Ten Commandments monument that was upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States in Van Orden versus Perry. The Mayflower Compact of 1620 was America's first written constitution and made a covenant with the Almighty God to form a civil body politic. This was the first purely American document of self-government and affirmed the link between civil society and God. The Northwest Ordinance of 1787 provided a method of admitting new states to the Union from the territory as the country expanded to the Pacific. The ordinance extended the fundamental principles. This is definitional, of course. It's the legislature's intent to apply the decision set forth by the Supreme Court of the United States, Van Orden versus Perry, to continue the rich tradition and ensure the students in our public schools may understand and appreciate the foundational documents of our state and national government. The Supreme Court acknowledged that the Ten Commandments may be displayed on local government property when a private donation is made for the purchase of the historical monument. It's the intention of the legislature that the section shall not create an unfunded mandate on any public school governing authority. The school boards are encouraged to use documents that are printed and made available to the schools free of charge. No later than January 1st, 2025, each public school governing authority shall display the Ten Commandments in each classroom in each school under its jurisdiction. The nature of the display shall be determined by each governing authority with a minimum requirement that the Ten Commandments shall be displayed on a poster or framed document that is at least 11 inches by 14 inches, the text of the Ten Commandments shall be the center focus of the poster or framed document and shall be printed in large and easily readable font. And this is where they closely cropped it. Because a lot of the stuff that I just read here, the people who are outraged about this possibly saw, most of them did not. And the people who are leading the outrage don't want any of this to be seen. Now, I have issue with this, because I don't believe that it is the authority of a public school system to do this by law. So I will step back and walk back from what I said earlier and say, because the way that I read this the first time was the fact, and this is before I read the bill in full here with you, was that it was supposed to be, if it got donated to the classroom, then they could put it up without facing any repercussion. No, they are actually requiring it in this document in easily readable font, and they've even gone out as far as to say it has to be at least 11 by 14, so they've laid out a size in this as well. But going back to the beginning of this, and I mean this coming down into an argument that Pam and I had when this first got announced either, is that none of this is meant in any purpose whatsoever to try to teach kids about the Ten Commandments. The people who pass this into law in the legislature in Louisiana don't give a flying fuck about your religion. I hate to tell you this. They are looking for a case to get out in front of the Supreme Court to see if they can get the Establishment Clause, which came from a Supreme Court case and is not actually in the Constitution, to be overturned. Much the way that it was done over Roe versus Wade. They don't care. They're going to tie up, they're going to get a bunch of their lawyer buddies paid, they're going to get their names in the history books, and yes, then you are going to start to see Texas, Wyoming, Idaho, Ohio start to follow suit into all of this if they think that they can go back and get away with it. Now, as a donation, just to prevent school administrators from being thrown in the pokey if they happen to cover something in this, especially like the legislation said. When Louisiana law was being written, one of its foundational principles was the Ten Commandments. And historically, if you're teaching Louisiana history, there is a place for it, if that is actually the case. And I wasn't there when Louisiana was drafted as a territory and admitted to the United States. So I can't sit here and tell you that this is the exact reason that they are doing this, especially if they're going to come back and require it. But what I would say is that I would also not want to see a teacher get thrown in the clink over teaching that, if that is a foundational document, and therefore a teacher could work it into their lesson plan. Now, requiring it, again, I have issue with that. I do. Above and beyond knowing what it is that they're actually doing with this, which is trying to get the Establishment Clause challenged in the Supreme Court, under a Supreme Court that they think is going to rule in their favor. Trust me, like I said, again, they don't care whether or not your kid can read the Ten Commandments and recite them back to memory. They are looking for a Supreme Court case and the almighty dollar, because that is what the people who wrote this bill worship. And they probably got a nice donation from the religious group that's going to print all these and provide them for, quote, free. Follow the money. That's where it always goes. Oh, we've got Dual Helix has joined us over on the Rumble side. I didn't have any of my chats up. I dubbed the music for something and I saw the music up. Dual Helix says, those are like Rhino Libs. I fly to Russia and get bunk beds with Snowden. Okay. I wore an old Billabong t-shirt earlier this week. Pine Gap, that's stupid, but it's Louisiana. Let's go in over to the other side here. The Magua says, covet his wife or his cattle. Is this the Kentucky Ten Commandments? Alright, let's talk about the challenges. Briefly from ABC News, Louisiana becomes the first state to require that the Ten Commandments be displayed in public school classrooms. Coming to ABC News from the Associated Press. I might have to go pop the air back on. In brief, one sentence from ABC News, Louisiana becomes the first state to require that the Ten Commandments be displayed in public school classrooms. From The Hill, Louisiana wants the Ten Commandments in schools, but which version? From the sounds of it, it looks like the King James Version. Yes, that is King James. And I know this even still, having grown up with the New International Version, Ten Commandments. I'm not concerned with an atheist, I'm not concerned with a Muslim, said Louisiana State Rep. Dodie Horton, explaining why she sponsored a bill requiring every public school in the state, kindergarten through college, to display the Ten Commandments. I'm concerned with our children looking and seeing what God's law is, continued the Republican from Bossier Parish in the northwest corner of the state. Although Horton may not hold Catholics and Jews in similar disregard, her statute raises problems for their faiths and others as well. Why would that hold issues for Jews? Because that's literally not Messianic law. Talmudic law. Veto-proof majorities in both House and state legislature passed House Bill 71, with the only opposition coming from a handful of Democrats. Once it is signed by Jeff Landry, Louisiana will be the only state to mandate displaying the Ten Commandments on a poster or framed document that's at least 11 by 14 in every classroom, printed in a large, easily readable font. The very specificity of the bill, which includes governmentally endorsed religious text, may prove its undoing. That was the point. Civil liberties organizations at Louisiana have already issued a statement calling the law unconstitutional. Our public schools are not Sunday schools, it reads, and students of all faiths or no faith should feel welcomed in them. Classroom displays of the Ten Commandments were held unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in 1980. Nonetheless, Horton and her colleagues believe the landscape has changed thanks to the conservative supermajority now controlling the court. Each conservative judge may not be willing to go that far. The statute's religious purpose is evident from its sponsor's own words. I hope and I pray that Louisiana is the first state to allow moral code to be placed back in the classrooms, Horton said in a legislative debate. Since I was in kindergarten at a private school, it was always on the wall. I learned there was a God, and I knew to honor him and his laws. Well, one of the problems that we have with this, Representative Horton, is the fact that you said right out in here that you went to a private school, which from the sounds of it was specifically centered on religion. Therefore, it was expected for you to learn this kind of thing in that kind of a classroom. Posting the Ten Commandments is essentially a religious act, not only because it favors religion over the non-religion, but also because it invariably favors one faith tradition over others, technically three. Because, as far as I know, the Quran also uses Talmudic law as the basis of its moral code, and then the Quranic books, after the fact, extends upon to the rules of Islam. I may be wrong about that, but as far as I know, Talmudic law is still Islamic base law. Louisiana statute requires a distinctly Protestant text with Elizabethan language, based on the King James Bible, which differs significantly from the versions used by Catholics, Jews, and others. Some differences are inconsequential, but others have deep theological implications. And yes, as expected, because I knew what this was put in place to do from the start. Promexio, civil rights groups file lawsuit over Louisiana Ten Commandments law. Multi-faith and civil liberties groups filed a lawsuit on Monday over recent Louisiana legislation mandating public schools display the Ten Commandments. Plaintiffs, who said the law unconstitutionally pressures students into religious observance, pose an expected challenge to the only state with such a requirement. No federal court has upheld any display of the Ten Commandments by public school, the lawsuit said. 9 Louisiana families of different faiths with children in public schools filed the lawsuit in federal court with the support of the American Civil Liberties Union, because of course they got into that one, and other organizations. The plaintiffs are Jewish, Christian, Unitarian Universalist, and non-religious. Public schools are not Sunday schools, Alana Odoms, executive director of the ACLU of Louisiana, said in a statement. We must protect the individual right of students and families to choose their own faith or no faith at all. The law, signed by Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry on Wednesday, requires a Protestant translation of the Ten Commandments in all classrooms within schools that require public funding, including colleges and universities. Former President Trump, campaigning for the November election, endorsed the move because, well, he's struggling with evangelicals. That's why. This may be, in fact, the first major step of the revival of religion, which I believe in when it's convenient, which is desperately needed in our country, he said on Truth Social. That was a statement straight for the boomers. You might as well have stamped the address of every boomer in the country on envelopes and just send it out in a mailer instead of putting it on Truth Social. Holy shit. On its surface, again, I'm not opposed to the morality in Ten Commandments being displayed, especially given the fact that it is the basis for Louisiana's legislative code. And if you take a bunch of them out, I mean, this is what we should be doing in the first place. This and this, of course. No other gods and graven images. Those are... And take not the name of the Lord like on in vain, and remember the Sabbath. I mean, those are all full-out religion. But, hey, be good to your parents, alright? Don't kill people. Don't sleep with another dude's wife. Don't take shit that isn't yours. Don't lie to people. And don't let your jealousy of your neighbor's house or his stuff drive you into criminal acts. Those 6 in themselves are the basis of a good moral code. But the requirement thing and the fact that it can only be by donation, but it has to be X size. Yeah, some of this bothers me in and of itself. Yeah, Mogwai kind of holds the same position I am. Mogwai says, I'm very religious and I have an issue with this. Schools are for learning, not indoctrination. Leave religious belief out. You want your kid to know God? Well, you have 7 days a week. I'm not going to read that out loud. You grab the Bible or other religious book and teach them. Don't expect Miss Stevens to do a lesson on Psalm 23. Yeah, and like the kid that I'm helping to raise right now, Palm's kid. The Bible is in this house. And she is welcome to pick it up and read it anytime she wants. And in fact, it's been required reading at points with this in this house. Palm has pushed that on her. Palm herself not being religious. But again, when I look at something like this, when I first see requirement, I see it has to be donated and it can only be a certain size. a lot of this tells me that this was planned for a Supreme Court case. Once again, your legislatures don't care what religion you are. As long as you keep paying your taxes. Alright, in other policy news, Biden announces new policy shielding undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens from deportation. From Gabe Gutierrez, Julie Sirkin, and Julia Ainsley. President Biden is taking executive action to protect undocumented spouses of American citizens, a move that would shield about 500,000 immigrants from deportation. The White House announced the election year policy Tuesday, framing it as a new action to keep families together, NBC News reported last week. That action protecting the spouses was likely to be announced soon after urging from immigration advocates and Democratic lawmakers, and as the president courts Latino voters in crucial battleground states. The new policy would allow non-citizens who have been in the country for at least 10 years and are married to a U.S. citizen and their children to apply for permanent residence without leaving the country. Now, I do have to look into this one a little bit deeper, honestly. I will come out and tell you when I'm slacking. But when this first popped up, I looked at this and I said in the Discord, isn't this already a thing? I'm pretty sure this is already a thing. Because I'm pretty sure that every sitcom from 1960 until now has had at least one episode where a character has married somebody who was or would have been illegal at some time in the near future to keep that person in the country. I remember the 70s show edition of this very well, because it was right before Red had his heart attack when Lori announced that she'd married Fez to keep him in the country. He said the order would go into effect this summer and stressed that it would not benefit people who recently came into the country. Instead, it would help the people who are paying taxes and contributing to our country and their family members. My sister's texting me. I'll have to look at that after the stream. This is the biggest thing since DACA, said a source familiar with the matter, an immigration advocate, which, I mean, you all know my position on DACA. Because, honestly, for people who don't know what their future is going to be every other year when they use them as political pawns and a political cudgel, it would be more moral at this point to just mass deport all of them. At least they'd know what's going to happen to them tomorrow. And I do have some sympathy for the DACA people, with the fact that most of them are over here, have to keep their nose clean to stay in the program, and are doing jobs. I think they're paying taxes as well. If nothing else, paying sales taxes. I have some sympathy for the DACA people, but I think it's terrible the fact that they keep them in immigration limbo. I always call it Schrodinger's immigration status, where they are neither legal nor illegal at any given time. And like I say, even though I would advocate for many of them to be still over here based on their contributions to our country, the economy, it would be more moral to mass deport them because, again, at least they would know what's happening the next day instead of having to sit and wonder every even-numbered year that we see. You guys get why I hate DACA. Malkoy says in Biden's defense, he only remembers happy days pre-Shark Jump. Shark Jump! And more immigration news. Aaron Rupar in a selectively edited clip. Of course, it's only 23 seconds long. Trump, employing Nazi logic, claims his mass deportation will lower inflation and reduce housing costs. Let's listen, and I will explain why he's actually right.
I will also stop inflation by stopping the invasion, rapidly reducing housing costs. You know, they're taking over our hotels. Think of it. You have people that come in illegally that don't speak the language. We don't even know the country. These are countries where we have nobody in our country that even understands the language. And they're living in luxury hotels in many cases. I will also stop inflation by stopping the invasion, rapidly reducing housing costs. You know, they're taking over our hotels.
So, will mass deportation lower inflation and reducing housing costs? Actually, yes, it will. For a couple different reasons. For inflation, it is the fact that the goods and services, and actually for housing, it's going to be the exact same thing. They say, the statistics now say that there are, 11 million illegal immigrants in this country? That all need a house, a place to live, that all need to eat, in a lot of cases, the same food that we eat. They all need to travel on the roads, which means because we've determined the government has to upkeep the roads. I know every libertarian that I know is fucking crying about that right now. But the government's got to upkeep those roads, which means potentially less taxes to take care of the roads. And then on the other side, the wage side of things, where once you take those people out of circulation, you have, give or take, 11 million jobs that these employers desperately need to go back and fill. So it's either pay the extra money or let the job go unfilled. The issue that I have with this, and of course, with the overly inflated prices of housing, trust me, as somebody who is house hunting right now, I know what that overly inflated price looks like. The only store of wealth that most people, working class in this country, has is their primary residence. When you pull 11 million people out of a system that is meant to service 330 million people, then we sit on a situation and an issue where does the housing market crash too fast, and people who bought their houses in 2020, at the end, 2021, 2022, even now into 23 and 24, lose literally everything that they have because they can't take a home equity loan against their house because their house isn't worth anywhere near what they paid for it, because the housing prices drop so unbelievably fast that now it's worthless. And they can't get out of the thing either because the same reason. But yes, technically we would reduce inflation, fewer people fighting over the same resources, and reduce housing costs because fewer people fighting over the same houses. But what's going to be too far? I don't know. I do have concern about that. All right, let's throw some music back up here. Mogwai says luxury hotels, putting them at the Route 6 motel is not luxury. Speak for anyone who's gone up and down 95 in South Carolina. What is this taking care of the roads? I cannot attest for the last 4 years, but I can say from what I saw on Route 95 in 2020, yeah, there's some merit in what it is that Mog said. There's definitely some merit in that. Alright, we gotta keep going. How about VP Gate, huh? Let's talk about that. Now, I do notice, too, that the mainstream media is saying vice president. They're not saying running mate, which is a little bit telling on what it is that they think is going to happen in November. From the Hill, these three Republicans are Trump's most likely VP picks from Brett Samuels. Former President Trump's public decision of a vice presidential pick is getting closer with the GOP convention less than a month away, and three contenders have emerged as frontrunners for a job that could instantly create a favorite for the 2028 Republican presidential nominee. Trump allies and sources close to the former president said Doug Burgum, J.D. Vance, and Marco Rubio are considered the likeliest picks at this point, though a handful of others have received vetting materials and Trump could make a surprise choice. I don't know how it all shakes out, but I'm fairly confident it ends up being one of those three. One unnamed source told The Hill, the only name that we have is a Trump ally. Trump told reporters in Philly over the weekend he had settled on a pick to join him on the Republican ticket in November, but he had yet to tell anyone who it was, including the pick, by the way. The former president also said his choice for vice president would be at Thursday's debate with Biden. Burgum, Rubio, and Vance, as well as several other GOP lawmakers, are all expected to attend a fundraiser with Trump in Atlanta following the debate. As President Trump has said himself, the top criteria in selecting a vice president is a strong leader who will make a great president for 8 years after his next 4-year term concludes. Trump campaign senior advisor Brian Hughes said in a statement, "But anyone telling you they know who or when Trump will choose his VP is lying unless that person is named Donald John Trump." Burgum, I could get behind. I could see myself voting for that ticket. Vance is a distant maybe, and you also have to keep in mind I have not committed to voting for the Trump ticket yet. At this time, I've leaned towards it, but I have not committed to it yet. I still know what that spending bill was, and the 6 that followed, especially under the Pinko Pucks. It's funny because all the Ron Bros right now think that I'm 100% all in for Trump because I'm against their guy. Rubio, I would not vote for. I would stay home that day. That is a guarantee. A few of the others that are being bandied around over here. A lot of people are saying Ramaswamy. I would not vote for that ticket. I can tell you that right off the bat. I would not vote for a Trump Ramaswamy ticket. Ramaswamy is not seriously running for the presidency. Ramaswamy has some good or service that he wants to come back out and sell to MAGA people starting in 2025. So he wanted the name recognition for that. Gabbard, I would not vote for. I would not vote for Trump Gabbard. I wouldn't do it. Yes, she has supposedly come around on guns, but Gabbard was far to the left of the corporate Democrats during the debate and was a noted gun grabber. Hey, they tell me she's come around. I don't believe it. Haley, I would stay home. DeSantis, I would stay home. Tim Scott, I would probably vote for. Ben Carson. Look, if the Donald wants my vote and he can give me at least a feasible way to stop the spending and then put Ben Carson as VP, I would probably go to the polls for that one. Just based on the fact that it's Ben Carson. I like Ben Carson. Byron Donalds shot himself in the foot. Kristi Noem shot herself in the foot. Neither one of them is going to be the vice president. That I can promise you. But of those three, there are only 2 that I'm lukewarm to. Alright, now we're going to go talk about the classified documents. Trump lawyers in classified documents case ask judge to suppress evidence seized during Mar-a-Lago search. From Eric Tucker. Look, this whole thing was a frame-up to begin with. I don't even honestly know why we're even still talking about this. Lawyers for Trump on Tuesday asked the judge presiding over his classified documents case to prevent prosecutors from using as evidence boxes of records seized during an FBI search of his Florida estate. The arguments marked the conclusion of a 3-day hearing, which prosecutors and defense lawyers have sparred over topics ranging from the legality of the appointment of special counsel Jack Smith, which that in and of itself should be in question, whose team brought the case, to whether the Republican former president should be barred from making the comments that could pose as a risk to the safety of the FBI agents involved in the investigation. Trump faces dozens of felony counts accusing him of illegally hoarding classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago home in Palm Beach and obstructing government efforts to get them back. He has pled not guilty. At issue Tuesday was a defense request to suppress the boxes of records that were taken from Mar-a-Lago during the August 8th FBI search. Defense lawyers contend in the application that the DOJ submitted to a judge to obtain a warrant to search the property omitted key facts and provided misleading information, in part because it did not include the details of the internal DOJ debate about whether the search of the property was an appropriate step. One of Trump's lawyers, Emil Bove, also told the judge that the warrant permitted an overly expensive search of a sprawling estate, allowing for Trump's personal papers to be seized in addition to documents with classified markings. He asked for what's known in the law as Frank's hearing, to further argue that the warrant application was defective and the resulting evidence should be suppressed. So there's a lot of stuff that is going on with this here. One of the big ones that goes with this is the fact that we, the people, the little guys, the people who are supposed to be voting for this and making the decision, are never going to get to see these documents. And I point this out every time one of these stupid fucks brings something up on X. It's one of the first things I ever point out. I always ask, can you show me a PDF of the document that made you cry? And they can't do it. They don't know what's in these documents. They are depending on a Department of Justice who, under the Floyd case and under the Jacob Blake case, they did not trust. With no evidence that can be presented to them. Do I believe that there was classification markings in this box? Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. Do I believe it was nuclear secrets? No, I don't. It could be. Just like when I said Schrodinger's immigration status a few articles ago. We're in a case where we have Schrodinger's classified documents. Where these could all be nuclear secrets. This could be what shuts the world down and what codes launch our nuclear weapons. Or let's be realistic, this could be Melania's chicken Kiev recipe. Both of these are realistic applications of what's going on here, and none of these people have ever seen them. Now, as far as a jury seeing them, and whether or not they can disseminate what's on there, that I don't know, because there's going to have to be extensive top secrecy hearings and trainings just to get people to a level where they can see these documents. If they can even see them at all. It'll depend on their clearance level. I mean, you're almost at a point where only military personnel and top cabinet officials could see these documents without compromising U.S. security, if what's in these documents, if what they claim is in these documents is actually what's in these documents. But the people who are calling to hang Donald Trump for treason are never going to see any one of these documents, ever. And I don't know how they can frame an allegation based on that. From NPC News, I don't appreciate your tone. Judge in Trump documents case reprimands prosecutor. From Owen Hayes, Jake Traylor, and Derek Gregorian. The judge presiding over the classified documents case reprimanded the prosecutor from Special Counsel Smith's office at a hearing Monday on a proposed gag order for the former president. I don't appreciate your tone, Eileen Cannon said when attorney David Harbach appeared to get exasperated. She questioned the need to modify Trump's conditions of release. Smith's office has challenged the need, those conditions over Trump's false claims that FBI agents were prepared to kill him. Of course, in spite of the fact that they were. While they were executing a 2022 search warrant at his Mar-a-Lago estate. The tense exchange at a federal courthouse in Fort Pierce came as attorney Harbach was arguing that Cannon should bar Trump from making more inflammatory statements about FBI agents who worked on the investigation. Cannon had noted that the agents' names were redacted in court filings, while Harbach was pointing out the agents were doxxed shortly after the search. By Jack Smith's office, by the way. Cannon told Harbach that his behavior was unprofessional, and she warned she would require someone else to make his arguments if he did not correct his behavior. Harbach later apologized. "I didn't mean to be unprofessional," he said. Defense attorney Blanche urged Cannon to deny the prosecution's request, arguing that Trump's comments cited the government's attorneys were directed at President Biden and not the FBI. If you look at the actual post, there's no threats to FBI agents. Blanche said these attacks are against Biden. One of Trump's Truth Social posts last month falsely claimed that crooked Joe Biden's DOJ, in their illegal and unconstitutional raid of Mar-a-Lago, authorized the FBI to use deadly and lethal force. NBC is saying that's falsely claimed in spite of the fact that it was literally written in the order. But it's a boilerplate. But it was still in the order. Uh-oh, what happened with the cops? Well, actually, you probably shouldn't say in live chat. You'll have to text it to me. Really? Again? This is the latest piece of propaganda with this, of course. Now, of course, you're never going to see an actual classified document. But the propaganda artists are all going to tell you that they're in there. And I've got the other propaganda piece over here. But let's start with Axios. New Mar-a-Lago photos show chaotic storage of classified documents. Isn't it interesting, by the way, that those get released just a couple days before the debate? I wonder if this is going to come up in a question somewhere. From Avery Lotz. Newly released photographs from the FBI search of Mar-a-Lago paint a picture of the haphazard state in which former President Trump kept documents marked as classified. While Jack Smith's investigation into the former president's alleged mishandling of classified documents has been indefinitely delayed, as Eileen Cannon considers a series of motions from the presumptive nominee's legal team, the never-before-seen photo offers a wider glimpse into the chaotic scene investigators found. Prosecutors, in response to Trump's motion to dismiss the indictment, said in a memorandum unsealed Tuesday that the boxes in which classified documents were found had no apparent organization whatsoever. And yet, we all knew that the documents were out of order. Documents found during the 2022 search were tucked away with clothing, pictures, frames, and Christmas ornaments. This is not a case where reams of identically sized documents were stacked neatly in file folders or red welds, arrayed perfectly within a box, the government's response read, arguing against former Commander-in-Chief's claim that the investigators disarranged the box's contents. Well, number one, if you believe that there were actual classified documents in there, then I would still believe that it was the FBI agents that spilled them all over. Prosecutors contended that at every stage, the agents have maintained the integrity of each container in which the evidence was found. The trove of images showed the papers strewn across the floor of the South Florida resort, and boxes clearly marked confidential and secret containing a mix of documents and a random graveyard of dated newspaper clippings, golf shirts, and binders. Trump personally chose to keep documents containing some of the nation's most highly guarded secrets in cardboard boxes, along with a collection of other personally chosen keepsakes of various sizes and shapes from his presidency. Newspapers, thank you notes, Christmas ornaments, magazines, clothing, and photographs of himself, and others the Monday court filing read. And again, I mean, there's a reason that they use classified documents on this one. Number one, it has to do with Hillary's emails and the narrative that surrounded those. That was one of the major reasons that they chose to use classified documents as a form of the indictment with that. But the big part of this, the big side of this as well, is the fact that you will never see the documentation of this. I will never see the documentation of this. Possibly in 20 years when all this gets declassed, we'll get to see the documents that were in there. But for the most part, they're using classified documents because then the government will never have to present evidence to the people. Oh, you want to see these documents? You must be wanting to compromise national security. I almost said classify national security, but compromise national security. Are you some kind of terrorist? Why do you want to see these documents? Well, you fuckwits are continuing to scream treason everywhere that you go. So I want to see what you want to hang a man over. The T word is not something to be bandied around lightly, because the penalty for treason is death. We have one of the paid propaganda artists, of course, Harry Sisson. This is how Donald Trump stored America's classified documents and nuclear secrets. He's an utter disgrace to this country. And I do recommend, of course, that you use this, if you're watching on video, as your justification of this, because don't click on this guy's page. I did, so that you don't have to, because don't give this little fucker ad revenue, because he's got that check next to him. So he says all kinds of inflammatory shit to get you to come back and try to, quote, correct the record. And he gets paid every time you do. But hey, what do I not see? A classified document. I see newspapers and binders. Nothing classified in there. And of course, I also don't see any evidence that this is how it was kept. How do I know the FBI agent didn't come back out and throw this all over the floor? Do we have body cam footage of this? Do we have any videotape of them going and walking in and finding it like this? Anything, or do we just have a loosely thrown together picture? With redactions on it, by the way. If you have to engage with it, screenshot it. Alright. And another VP one, but we covered that pretty well. Oh, I've got one more here from the documents, though. I saved that. This is the one that I found while the title card was up. Denise Wheeler deciding that she wants to get in on this as well. Some of the docs Trump had in his possession at Mar-a-Lago are so secret the federal government isn't even using them as evidence because they don't want people, even in the court system, to see them. Okay, Denise, then how do you know what's in them? Once again, that is the biggest problem that I have with this, is the fact that nobody who's making these claims is ever going to see what's in any of these documents, ever. That Trump has been allowed to get away with this makes me physically sick. He is a traitor. There it is. Again, the penalty for treason is death by hanging. This is a person who wants to see the former president of the United States hanged on public television in front of the world over a document that she's never seen in her life and has no idea what's in it. And I'm probably going to screw with that one too, because that one doesn't have a blue check on it. So I will remind her, of course, that she wants to see a man hanged over a document she's never seen. Back to the debate. Again, reminder. If you are on Twitch or Rumble right now, you are invited to watch the CNN debate with me. But as Liberty Doll said, Thursday's stream is canceled. CNN has announced they'll be doing takedowns of any channel streaming and running commentary on the debate. And YouTube is on board with this. Could result in copyright strikes and full-out channel suspensions. No, this is not going to be full-out channel suspensions, by the way. With the way that CNN is going to do this, this is going to be a full, straight-out ban. No recovery, no ability to get any of your work back. If you get caught streaming this, you will be instantly taken down. And you'll get an email from Google that says, your account has been banned. If we find you making another account to go back and circumvent this ban, that account will be banned as well. Unfortunately, I don't have the resources to fight it, even though this is a clear abuse of power and at its core totally illegal to censor a presidential debate. Reminder, I will be streaming this on Twitch and Rumble, not YouTube. For this very reason, you are invited to join me. I'd love to see you. And if you want to help a guy out, go tweet at the Liberty Doll and say, hey, go sit in with my boy J. Edgar. It's going to be a good time. From the Hill, here's what to know about the presidential debate and how to watch it. We will go very briefly on this one, because of course, the how to watch it is right where you're sitting right now. From Yash Roy. 4 years after last facing off against each other, President Biden will debate former President Trump on June 27th at 9 p.m. Eastern. Trump and Biden decided to flout the commission on presidential debates and debate each other far earlier than is normally for a presidential election. The second debate is scheduled for September 10th, hosted by ABC. And we won't get our third debate this time. In recent days, Trump has said he does not want to underestimate Biden. He and his supporters have also begun to lay the groundwork to dismiss Biden's performance in the debate, spreading the baseless claim, because the Hill is fully in the tank for Democrats, that he's using performance enhancers. Biden is taking a turning point after months of negative coverage of his age and lackluster poll numbers. Biden and Trump, both of whom are the oldest presumptive nominees in the nation's history, go back into the debate, with the national polls largely showing them neck and neck. Trump has a 58% chance of winning the presidency compared to Biden's 42% chance per Decision Desk HQ in the Hill's presidential election forecast. Here's what you need to know. Who's hosting? CNN will host the debate in Atlanta with Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. Jake Tapper, of course, being accused of spending 4 years calling Trump Hitler. We'll watch that clip in just a moment. There will be no audience, because of course there won't. How do I watch? Twitch.tv/JEdgar101 or Rumble, youtube.com/jedgar101. What are the rules? Microphones will be muted throughout the debate except when it's that candidate's turn to speak, or when Biden wants to interrupt Trump. The moderators are also empowered to use all tools at their disposal to enforce timing and ensure a civilized discussion. Biden and Trump have agreed to the rules. What were the qualification requirements and why did RFK Jr. not qualify? Well, because he's an independent candidate and they didn't want him there. A candidate had to fulfill the requirement to be president under Article 2, Section 1, which requires the candidate be 35 years old and a natural-born citizen of the United States. They also had to file a statement of candidacy with the FEC, and a candidate's name must appear on a sufficient number of states' ballots to reach the 270 vote threshold prior to the eligibility deadline. They also must have received at least 15% in 4 separate national polls of registered or likely voters. RFK did not qualify for the debate and has filed a complaint with the FEC alleging that Biden, Trump, and CNN were illegally working together to keep him off the debate stage. Jill Stein of the Green Party also submitted an FEC complaint. DeSabus has joined us over on the YouTube side. Good vibes. Yeah, we're talking about the debates, which you just missed the announcement, but I will not be doing the debate on YouTube and commentary on YouTube. But you can join my Twitch, and I will send you that over in the Discord that you're in, if you're interested in that. From CNN, the host of the debates. The Biden-Trump debate will lay bare a fateful national crossroads. Op-ed from Stephen Collinson. Presidential debates crystallize a quadrennial dilemma for a country contemplating a new political direction, but they're usually defined by more trivial personality quirks, zeitgeist moments, and gaffes than high-level ideological arguments. Al Gore's melodramatic sighs, H.W.'s unwise glances watch, a day's growth on Nixon's chin, and Trump's bulk looming over Hillary Clinton remain iconic, years after the policy clashes in those debates have been forgotten. And while Thursday's debate hosted by CNN between Biden and Trump could also turn on a theatrical flurry between the two men who are openly despise one another, the policy beat of the presidential debate has rarely been so important as in this neck-and-neck White House race. A charged political backdrop dropped to a vital debate. Trump's attempt to regain the White House less than 4 years after he attempted to steal the last election poses a potentially existential question for the democratic system. The former president's conservative backers are, meanwhile, proposing an evisceration of the bureaucracy and the politicization of judicial and intelligence leadership posts to reconcile the goals of the GOP candidate, supporting 1 criminal conviction, 3 other indictments, and a thirst for revenge. At the same time, and despite a roaring jobs market, millions of Americans are worn down by high prices and cost of borrowing. I don't know where you're getting a roaring job market from, but the legacy of a once-in-a-generation pandemic robbed the country of a sense of economic security that Biden promised to restore 4 years ago and that remains elusive for many. The Supreme Court's overturning of the constitutional right to abortion 2 years ago has opened an ideological and religious schism over reproductive rights that Biden plans to exploit to hurt Trump. But the president is equally vulnerable over an immigration crisis on the southern border that has swamped asylum laws unfit to handle a new generation of migrants fleeing gangs, economic blight, and climate disasters. So, Collinson tells us that this is going to be a policy debate over what either men would come and bring into the next term. And if that's actually what happens, I will be entertained, and I'm pretty sure that Biden will be effed in the A. Here's what I actually think is going to happen in the debates. January 6th, Stormy Daniels, 34 convictions. Roe versus Wade, January 6th. COVID response. That's what the debate is going to be. I can almost guarantee that at this point. And it's sad. You know, I made a video talking about what it would take to get me to vote Trump, because I'm not voting Biden, I can tell you that right off the bat. What it would take to get me to vote Trump. And the first thing that I said was, stop talking about January 6th. Stop living in the past. All of this is over at this point. I want to hear about what each candidate wants to do to bring the country forward. But since Biden doesn't have a platform, he has to live on January 6th and can't go anywhere else. This was an interesting story. The Beanie Boy covered it earlier. Days before debate, Trump spokesperson clashes with CNN anchor on air. A Trump spokesperson got into a tense exchange with CNN's Casey Hunt over debate host Dana Bash and Jake Tapper on Monday morning, just days before the former president set to face off against President Biden on the cable network this week. Hunt cut Carolyn Levitt's mic after an interview with the National Press Secretary on This Morning about Trump's prep for Thursday's debate spiraled into an argument. By the way, this is exactly what's going to happen on the debate stage, too. I'm not just going to present you with the story here. We're going to watch the video.
Here on the show, we played that to remind everyone that that was some of what they saw on the debate stage in 2020. Of course, President Trump went on to lose that election to Joe Biden. Can you tell us what Donald Trump is going to do differently on the debate stage this time?
Sure. Well, President Trump is well prepared ahead of Thursday's debates. Unlike Joe Biden, he doesn't have to hide away and have his advisors tell him what to say. President Trump knows what he wants to say, and he's going to relay his vision to the American people to make this country strong, safe, secure, and wealthy again. He's been doing that across this great nation to all corners of this country. That's why he was in Detroit, Michigan last week. He was in Philadelphia for a big rally on Saturday night, and that's why President Trump is knowingly going into a hostile environment on this very network on CNN with debate moderators who have made their opinions about him very well known over the past 8 years and their biased coverage of him. So President Trump is willing to bring his message to every corner of this country, to voters, to ensure that he wins this election in November. He looks forward to doing that, and I know the American public look forward to hearing from him.
So I'll just say my colleagues, Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, have acquitted themselves as professionals as they have covered campaigns and interviewed candidates from all sides of the aisle. I'll also say that if you talk to analysts of debates previous, that if you're attacking the moderators, you're usually losing. So I really want to focus in on what these two men are going to do and say when they stand on the stage. Now, we have a little bit of what Donald Trump, your boss, has said in trying to set expectations for this debate. I want to play a series of his comments, and then we'll talk about it. Watch.
Maybe I'm better off losing the debate. I'll make sure he says I'll lose the debate on purpose. Maybe I'll do something like that.
I assume he's going to be somebody that will be a worthy debater. Should I be tough and nasty and just say you're the worst president in history? Or should I be nice and calm and let him speak?
So he's basically saying there, well, will I let Joe Biden win? It does seem as though many Republicans have set the bar very low in terms of arguing that Joe Biden is basically senile. Now you have people like Doug Burgum coming out and saying, well, President Biden's very accomplished, trying to set expectations in a different place. What do you expect from Joe Biden?
Well, first of all, it would take someone 5 minutes to Google Jake Tapper, Donald Trump, to see that Jake Tapper has consistently, frequently likened President Trump to Adolf Hitler.
Ma'am, I'm going to stop this interview if you continue to attack my colleagues. I would like to talk about Joe Biden and Donald.
She is talking about the debate and Biden and Trump. Because yes, as was pointed out, Jake Tapper, as the moderator, has sat back and, I mean, he was very free-flowing and open about calling Trump Hitler throughout those 4 years. And we'll keep finishing off with this. And I did want to provide the full context and clip because I didn't want to selectively edit like our friends on the left do. But yes, Casey Hunt cuts the mic and boots her off. And let's go to commercial. By the way, when we're done with this too, I have breaking news.
Donald Trump, who you work for.
Yes.
If you are here to speak on his behalf, I am willing to have this conversation.
I am stating facts that your colleagues have stated in the past.
Okay,
now, as
I'm
for
sorry,
this
guys.
debate,
We're going to come back out to the
expectation
panel. Caroline, thank you very much for your time. You are welcome to come back at any point. She is welcome to come back and speak about Donald Trump, and Donald Trump will have equal time to Joe Biden when they both join us now.
Yeah, I don't believe that either. And this, I mean, the fact that this came up, that this woman is so flustered by this, because, and again, like Liberty Doll said, these people don't want us out here making commentary, telling you how we, the little guys, see it. And they're very open about that. That's why, again, no audience, and they will strike down any channel except for Tim Pool's that is doing debate coverage.
Now, later this week in Atlanta for this debate. Our thanks to Caroline. John, that, of course, is here on the...
By the way, New York's congressional primary is today, and that super popular representative from New York who they were talking about Speaker of the House at some point here after Hakeem Jeffries, Mr. Bowman is done. He got voted off in the primary. His Democrat challenger is going to, with New York, most likely take his spot, but have the chance to run against the Republican in that district. So to Bowman, even though I don't have to hear it now until January, Godspeed. Maybe he can go back to his public school career and teach people how to pull the fire alarm. All right, speaking of the debates, Merchan is back in the news again because this will be happening, of course, prior to sentencing. Judge alters Trump's gag order, letting him talk about witnesses and jury after hush money conviction. Which is part of the reason I believe that this entire debate is going to be January 6th conviction, rape allegation, January 6th, COVID deaths, January 6th. From Michael R. Sisek. A Manhattan judge on Tuesday modified Trump's gag order, freeing the former president to come out publicly about witnesses and jurors in the hush money criminal trial that led him to the felony conviction, but keeping others connected to the case off limits until he is sentenced on July 11th. Juan M. Merchan's decision just days before Trump's debate on Thursday, with President Biden clears the presumptive nominee to again go on his attack against his lawyer-turned-foe Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, and other trial witnesses. Trump was convicted in New York on May 30th of falsifying records to cover up a potential sex scandal, making him the first ex-president convicted of a crime. Now, why would he do this? In a 5-page ruling, Merchan wrote the gag order was meant to protect the integrity of the judicial proceedings, and that protections for witnesses and jurors no longer applied now that the trial's ended and the jury's been discharged. Now, mind you, thou shalt not talk about my daughter still. But everyone else, fuck them. And again, that's because I'm sure that he's already got the debate questions as well. Because it's, I mean, anybody with a working set of neurons knows that we are about to spend 2 hours listening to January 6th, 34 indictment counts, Georgia racketeering, January 6th, classified documents, COVID deaths, January 6th. There's not going to be a bit of policy coming up here. Gag order in classified docs case may lead to Trump's arrest after debate with Biden, lawyer says, which is the reason that it got lifted. So we won't go with that. And Doug Burgum, who is going to be at the debate. Burgum challenges CNN to ask Biden questions about Hunter Biden's laptop at debate, from Daily Wire News. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum pushed CNN over the weekend to challenge Biden in this week's upcoming debate over false claims that he made in 2020 about Hunter's laptop, which of course they are not going to do. Burgum, who is one of the candidates Trump is considering for his vice presidential running mate, made the remarks during a Sunday interview with Caitlin Collins on State of the Union when asked how important he thought it was for Trump to have a strong performance. Here's the video.
But I think, again, there has been a real effort on the Biden team to try to lower expectations. But I think we have to look at the guy's run for office more than a dozen times. He's run for president 4 times. He's been campaigning since President Nixon was in office. This guy has got the ability, and we've seen it. We've seen him in debate 4 years ago. We've seen him in the State of the Union this year. That when he needs to, he can step up. But I think this is a real opportunity for CNN, most trusted name in news, to ask some tough questions, including, because this is a rematch. And when we had this debate just before the election 4 years ago, Joe Biden looked into the camera and said, that Hunter Biden's laptop was a smear campaign, Russian disinformation, called it garbage. And now we know that none of that is true. And I think this is an opportunity. I think America's waiting. I mean, CNN's got an opportunity to ask tough questions of both these candidates.
Yeah.
No, but they're not going to. Good on Burgum, though. All right. Couple more that I want to touch on here. One of these is going to make it over to things I like instead, by the way. But there are a couple other things that I want to get to before we finish out the show. Supreme Court upholds law barring domestic abusers from owning guns in major Second Amendment ruling. I could bloviate on this until we hit the 2-hour mark from this point. And I know that I could because I've been doing it all week. So this week, the Supreme Court ruled on a case. Supreme Court upheld a federal law Friday that bars guns for domestic abusers, rejecting an argument pressed by gun rights groups that the prohibition violated the Second Amendment. The 8-1 decision in one of the court's most closely watched cases limited the scope of a blockbuster ruling. The judges handed down just 2 years ago that prompted a flood of legal challenges to other gun laws across the nation. The decision, which placed most of the court's conservatives and liberals on the same side, could help shore up similar federal gun regulations that have been challenged since the Supreme Court vastly expanded gun rights in 2022, at least in situations where criminal defendants considered dangerous. The court's 2022 ruling caused substantial confusion for lower court judges reviewing the Second Amendment lawsuits. So, in the majority, traitor. In the minority, based. Here is the problem with this, and part of the reason that they did this and chose a specific case to take up on this is because it is very, 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 very easy to get on the side of the state for this one because, I mean, who actually wants a domestic abuser to have guns? Who could sit there and say that a boy who beats up his wife should ever have guns? And they use an emotionally charged situation like this to get the ruling that they want. fully undermining not the Second Amendment in this situation, but the Fourth and Fifth. Unlawful search and seizure and trial by jury. Now, when they say that they are coming and taking the firearms of an accused domestic abuser, not a convicted domestic abuser, an accused domestic abuser, it is because they are working off of a civil case, a civil filing, to make their justification that somebody who might be too dangerous to have his guns has his guns. And anybody can file a domestic abuse filing. For any reason at this point. And hell, if you're looking to get guns off the street and taken away by the court system, this is probably going to be your best way to do it, is just accuse the person of domestically abusing you. In some way or another. Because they take the guns first and they ask the questions later. Which is one of the other big reasons that I am not ready to put my vote behind Donald Trump, because he actually had the same idea in his presidency. We'll take the guns first, we'll do due process later. Now, if this was a criminal proceeding, this would make this slightly different, but even an armed robber, unless he's remanded to the jail through the entirety of his legal proceeding, a guy who takes a 45 into a 7-Eleven and points it at the clerk and tells the clerk to put everything in the drawer in the bag and then chokes on a hot dog in the parking lot and gets caught by the cops, even that guy doesn't lose his firearms until conviction. Until actual criminal statutory conviction of a felony. Which is the standard that we should be holding. No, I do not want somebody who went out and beat up his girlfriend. And I know I've had plenty of female friends throughout my life who've had their boyfriends beating up on them. I know when you're in that situation how dangerous it can be for that kind of person to have a gun. But we have these standards in this country for a reason. Because the crown in the 18th century liked to just come through and take personal property from people because they could whenever they wanted to, and just make up a reason as to why they did it. We have a set specific standard for this, for a reason, and it is to keep the government in check. And if this person is really so dangerous, such a threat to society that he could kill his lover and anybody that's ever been attached to her, for God's sakes, throw cuffs on him and put him in a fucking cell. Let's make this a criminal thing, so we can get these people off the streets and out of the militia. Why that's not a criminal case, I have no fucking idea. Especially when you've got the 6'4" jacked linebacker that's beating the crap out of his 5' tall girlfriend. Why is this not a criminal case? Explain it to me. Explain it to me like I'm 5, why we're not pursuing this as criminal instead of civil. Can I go send a message quick? Alright, what else do we have here? I am actually going to hold that over for things that I like. I'm going to put that on the close. You guys have already seen the story, so we'll move this one over here. Skip the Gateway Pundit stuff. we'll skip the Oakland mayor stuff. Because I don't know enough about that to figure out why they're going back and raiding her. Mass 911 was down for a day. They got cyber attacked. But the last one that I want to touch on before we go off of this, coming back and bringing back the Crimea thing. CNN. At least 5 dead after missile fragments scatter over beachgoers in Russian-occupied Crimea. From Zahid Mahmoud, Daria Tarasova, Xiaofei Zhu, and Maria Knight. At least 5 people were killed and over 100 injured when missile fragments scattered over beachgoers during a Ukrainian strike on Sevastopol on Russian-occupied Crimea, authorities say. Unfortunately, we have currently 124 victims, of which 3 are dead children, 2 are dead adults. Sevastopol Governor Mikhail Razvazhayev said on Telegram. The Ministry of Defense said the post on Telegram that Ukraine carried out the attack was using a U.S.-supplied ATA-CMS operational tactical missile equipped with cluster warheads. 4 missiles were shot down by Russian air defense, but another deviated from its flight trajectory in the final sector due to the impact of air defenses, with the warhead exploding in the air over the city, the Post added. Video footage posted on X shows the aftermath of the strike, with wounded civilians seen being carried from the beach in stretchers before being loaded into vehicles. Beachgoers, some of them still in their swimwear, can be seen evacuating the area. The American Eagle brand over on Rumble. I am not going to pop that that video live. If you want to tell me what it is, I will look at it after the stream. One of the victims killed in the Ukrainian strike was the daughter of Oleg Avryanov, the deputy mayor of Magadan. Yuri Grushin, the mayor of Magadan, and said Avryanov's daughter Sofia was 9 and on vacation with her parents in Sevastopol. The casualties were partially caused by the timing of the strike, which came at a time when civilians, some were returning from work, some had already gone to the beach with their children, according to Razvazhayev, who announced a day of mourning. Now, this is part of the reason where I say that this has gone too far, and I've been an advocate for a long time of the fact that we need to sit down and have a come to Jesus moment about what's happening over this. Because the Ukrainians are killing civilians willy-nilly. There is a reason the story did not get widespread. Any sort of widespread coverage on the mainstream media, because this goes directly against the narrative. And I couldn't even tell you right now whose citizens were here. Originally, of course. This is Russian-occupied Crimea. This is Russian-occupied Crimea that's been Russian-occupied Crimea since 2014. Which means this has been in Russian hands for 10 years. It is likely that these are all Russian civilians, which doesn't excuse anything. These are not militants. This is not a military strike or a military target. And of course they had to use US munitions to do so. In fact, the fact that this didn't get any widespread coverage is basically confirming to me that everything that they say in this article is true. Because if it wasn't true, then we'd be hearing Russian propaganda this and false flag that, and Russians firing on their own citizens and left and right and everything else. No, Volodymyr Zelensky is not a good person. He is not a good guy. He never has been a good guy. He is as corrupt as the rest of them. Do I believe Russia should be massacring citizens as they go through territory? No, of course not. Do I believe this is exactly how it's been presented to us from the beginning? No, I do not. Because, as I've always said, and we're going to have to close after this because we're going to run out of time. But as I have always said, let's get the map back up. No, Mogwai, we're not going to Thursday because I got the map up. Come on, bring the map over here, you fucker. Belarus is a Russian puppet state. They have, quote, independence, but their government is entirely controlled by Moscow, which means Moscow can rally troops all along this border. If Russia wanted Ukraine, they would start from Mazir, go down to the point, walk down the Dnipro River, through the bed in the basin, and surround Kiev in a day instead of slogging through mountainous territory for this region of the Ukraine, between Kharkiv and Mariupol, or Kherson rather. There is something else going on with this. My working theory is that this region of the country, which apparently is more Russian aligned to begin with, I don't have evidence of that, but that was something that was brought up every time I brought this up by other people in my chat, that this Russian area of the country, which is more ethnically Russian, more apt to speak Russian, petitioned Kiev for independence. Kiev said, fuck you, so they petitioned Moscow and said, hey, help us be independent. Because it's strategically the only thing that makes sense to me. Why you would start from here to get here when you control this nation right here makes zero sense to me. Hell, why you would start from there when you have a decent blue water navy and not send people up through Odessa through relatively flatter terrain with fuel supplies waiting in the Black Sea. Start from Crimea and the little spot here going into Georgia, start from there and then march up that way if you really want to take the long and scenic route. But that's my 2 cents on it, and I mean, if everything in the CNN article is true, then Zelensky has decided to take his anger out against Russian civilians, or possibly his own. I'm sure that not everybody evacuated Crimea as soon as it got annexed. Alright, that's the news for the day. Now we're going to go rules of acquisition, of course, first, and close out the show with things I like and things that I hate. Our Ferengi rule of acquisition for the day. As always mentioned, the Ferengi rules of acquisition are the hyper-capitalistic commandments of the hyper-capitalistic Ferengi space race, the fictional race in the Star Trek universe. Every week we read one of these rules, explain how it can be used in canon and how it can be used in our real life, or on an alternate, if it cannot be used in our real life, because Roddenberry was an avowed communist. Then we look at how it's being made fun of for how it could be used in our real life. So, we're using an ebook today as our source for the 5th rule of acquisition. Ebook is called Cold Fusion. I'm not sure what the SCE prefix is. Let's go look at this. Oh, Star Trek Corps of Engineers, so a series of ebooks. A series of short stories centered around several starships and characters. I might have to go read those. So So on this one, I can't tell you how it was used in Canada because I've never read the source material. But I can tell you how we use this in real life. From the 5th rule of acquisition, always exaggerate your estimates. This one is actually a pretty well no-brainer off of this. And anybody who's ever been in sales, especially sales of a service rather than a good, knows this to be true. Because if you come in underestimate, you look like a hero. So when you're making estimates, always go and pad those things out just a little bit. Go back and say that it's going to cost a little bit more to come back and get this done. And then when it comes in 10 grand under estimate, you are a hero. You are the greatest person that person's ever known. So there it is, your 5th rule of acquisition. Always exaggerate your estimates. Let's do a couple things that I like and a few things that I hate. Let's get the live chat back up here. We're over the 2-hour mark as far as stream time, but still got a few minutes on record time. Alright. We're going to start with the tip thing. Because as I've reminded everybody, my mother worked tip jobs throughout her entire career. So we're going to go with box business to start with. Trump drops $500 tip at Philly cheesesteak restaurant as possible VP name is floated in crowd interaction. From Jasmine Bayer. And a part of this is coming because from KHOU 11, Trump is proposing to make tips tax-free. What would that mean for workers? Well, it would mean a lot more money in their pockets and a lot more or less pay-in for some of these workers who only make, what is it now? Mom, if you're watching, which I see a couple people popping up on the YouTube side, what is it now? 3 something? 4 something maybe? I think it might still be 2 something, honestly. Former President Trump's new proposal to exclude tips from federal taxes is getting strong reviews with some Republican lawmakers, though major questions remain about the impact of policy and how it would work. What's certain is that a change in taxation of tips would affect millions. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates that there are 2.24 million waiters and waitresses across the country, with tips making up a large percentage of their income. Trump announced his tax-free tips plan at the June 9th rally in Nevada, a key battleground state with 6 electoral votes in the race for the White House. President Biden won the state in 2020, but the Trump campaign hopes to put the state in play this fall, partially, I think, by using some of this to come back out and say, hey, service industry, vote for me. Tom is saying $4, maybe $2 to $4 the last I heard. I think it might still be $2.44. I know my mom is going to come back and figure this out. Oh, and by the way, Mog resubscribed at the top of the show too. Thank you for resubscribing there. No, Mog, you don't have to worry about forgetting what day it is because we just switched back to our regular schedule today. Because I just got switched to my regular work schedule today, well, yesterday. As far as your tips go, here's the thing. Every waiter and waitress in the world, in the country at least, reports the exact amount of tips that they get down to the penny every single time. 100%. They never just report 10% of tips because that would be illegal. That would be a felony. You would never want to do a thing like that. So they always report 100% of their tips every single time, every single instance, no question. So that would mean a lot less paid in because, I mean, when you look at some of these paychecks out there too, I mean, a lot of it's just going for the health insurance that the employer is required to offer to the employee and sometimes the taxes. This is not a tip position, but I remember, and some of it is low-wage stuff. A woman that I worked with at a grocery store when I was in college actually got a paycheck for $1 working a 15-hour week. I think it was less than $1. I think it was like 53 cents at the time, which At the time, the minimum wage federally in Wisconsin was $5.15. But because she was working at a dental office as her full-time job, as a receptionist in a dental office, she was only working with us because the union that was in the grocery store had better health insurance benefits family-wide than the dental office that she was working in. So she was working there for the insurance, basically. So once, all that was deducted, it came out to 53 cents. And that's all well and good for the waiter and waitress because, taxation is stuff to me to begin with. But, this would be a boom on the working class part of the economy. This could lead to bigger savings or, alternately, large amounts of reinvestment or people moving up into a class somewhere. The possibilities are endless. And really, realistically, and all you people who think that everybody should pay in all their taxes and more should keep in mind that on the grand scheme of things, as far as taxation individually goes, you're not going to be missing out on that much taxation to begin with either. You're not. What little bit waitstaff make on average and get tipped on, among our country where we have millionaires and billionaires that have capital gains tax and other things like that, because no, of course they don't pay any income tax, but they pay the capital gains tax when they cash out one of their assets. By ratio, the tipped workers you're not losing out that much tax revenue by letting them keep their cash tips, and you still get to tax their income. They're on paper stuff. So, I kind of like this a lot. Let's talk about the title card of this show here for a second, because honestly, I thought this was hilarious. I got a short clip here, and then YouTube has the full 13-minute interview clip. So during an interview situation where one guy was out doing man on the street, talking about how to get and keep men, and I think it might have been women too. One woman went out and went viral to the point that she is releasing merchandise. And the memes, oh my god, the memes that came with this. I've stolen several of them at this point. But we're actually going to see the actual clip that brought this out here. I give you the Hawk Tuah girl.
You gotta give him that Hawk Tuah and spit on that thing, you get me? Give him that Hawk Tuah and spit on that thing, you get me?
That woman is now famous for that. I don't know who started pushing this around, who got this out here. This woman is going to be a self-made millionaire over this. Now, the Hawk Tuah thing is already coming to a close. You can't hashtag it over on X anymore. The memes are going to fizzle out probably within, I would say, the next few weeks. But this woman has already opened up a merch store. Know your meme saying, "Who's the Hawk Tuah girl? The spit on that thing girl." Meme and TikTok video explained. The search for her ad has become something of a manhunt. The original clip was posted as an Instagram reel by YouTubers Tim and DTV. The interview was conducted in Nashville with two women out on the main street who were likely bar hopping or taking a break from the club. In the video, the interviewer asked her, "What's one move in bed that makes a man go crazy every time?" To which she replies, "Oh, you gotta give him that Hawk Tuah and spit on that thing. You get me?" The video racked up more than 18 million views on Instagram and 500,000 on TikTok in less than a week.
Go crazy every time.
Oh, you gotta give him that huck too and spit on that thing. You get me?
I'm trying to see what that be like right there. Look, be that.
What's one move in bed that makes a man go crazy every time?
Oh, you gotta give him that huck too and spit on that thing. You get me?
I will admit, it took me probably 36 hours into the novelty of this thing to actually figure out what it was. But yes, good morning, and it appears that Hawk Tuah Girl now has her own authorized apparel. If in case you want to, Fathead Threads in Belfast, Tennessee, Hawk Tuah official. We are selling authorized merchandise representing the Hawk Tuah Girl, so she's getting part of the proceeds. Get all of your apparel here. Jason Poteet, number I'm not going to read on YouTube because that'll get auto-modded as a docs. And that is at fatheadthreads.com. If you guys want to go check that out and get your own Hawk Tuah merchandise. And we'll do one more thing I like before we do some things that I hate. Alright, from Snopes, of all people. No, Trump did not call neo-Nazis and white supremacists very fine people. You should have seen the heads exploding on this one, because this has been the narrative. Since the Unite the Right rally happened. Well, he called Nazis very fine people. Reading from Fox News, this is an op-ed from Tim Graham. Snopes finally admits media Democrats were wrong about Trump. From Tim Graham. The left-leaning fact-checking website Snopes has spurred anger and anxiety among liberals for ruling, right before the first debate, that former President Trump never praised neo-Nazis at Charlottesville, which, by the way, was the supposed reason that Biden even got into it in the first place in 2020. In a 2017 press conference with combative reporters. Snopes checker Taija Perry Cook wrote that while Trump did say that there were very fine people on both sides, he specifically also noted that he was not talking about neo-Nazis and white supremacists, and said they should be condemned totally. Therefore, we have rated this claim as false. Which everybody else in a known universe who has seen the 2-minute clip already knew. But they've been running with this thing for 2 fucking years. Without a care in the world, so. And by the way, this is not going to change the opinion of anybody who's believed this to the point that they've made it their entire personality, either. But no, he did not say the very fine people on both sides, without at least coming back out and saying, except the neo-Nazis, they should all be totally condemned. Now let's do a couple things that I hate. This is kind of a thing I like and thing that I hate together, because it confirms the Streisand effect. See, Barbra Streisand complained about photographers taking pictures of her Hollywood house, and showed the pictures that the photographers were taking overhead, which showed the rest of the world which house was Barbra Streisand's. We call this the Streisand effect, where somebody complains about something and then puts the source material out there so other people can go back and see it, and thus making the whole thing go viral. Well, Barbra Streisand again has done the Streisand effect at this one. Barbra Streisand, the New York Post, is printing lies about President Biden. No other media outlet should amplify its disinformation. I wonder what a bunch of people went and did as soon as Barbra Streisand, of all people in the world, Barbra Streisand, said, don't go look at the New York Post and the disinformation there. I mean, sometimes the irony writes itself. This wouldn't have been as ironic if it was anybody other than Barbra Streisand doing this, by the way. Alright, a couple other things here that I hate. Rhonda McMillan, 3D artist, who is Silver Arctic Fox, posting a very grainy picture selfie, which we don't know what the selfie is for. Friend of the show, Kristen Special K, actually asked what the selfie is for. Trump isn't your savior. He doesn't care about you or anyone else. He doesn't really want to be president. It's too difficult, too confusing, too much like hard work. He wants to stay out of prison and create a right to worship him, nothing more. Just like anybody else who's ever sought a public office ever in the history of politics. Going all the way back to Rome, by the way, where they were literally acting as gods. In the most literal sense of the word, acting as gods. Couple more things that I hate. Eric Alper pointing out that this week was the anniversary of the death of George Carlin, which I very much enjoyed George Carlin. I can't even imagine what he'd be saying about the world we're living in now. I can. He'd be so angry and funny, and to tell the truth, like he always did. Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire decided to weigh in on this one and says, well, George Carlin is easily the most overrated stand-up comedian of all time. He never really challenged mainstream culture, which is a bald-faced lie, by the way. Just packaged a bunch of pretty standard liberal rants and complaints with swear words so people would think he was edgy. Most of his later stuff in particular is cringe as hell. While I don't disagree that George Carlin himself skewed to be left-wing, he was anti-political. George Carlin is closer to my position, or at least what he wrote into his stand-up. I never knew the guy personally. I can't tell you what he actually believed, but I can tell you from what his stand-up said was basically the position that I am. Everybody sucks, and voting for them is an exercise in futility because they're all going to disappoint you anyway. That is not a standard liberal rant in today's liberal left-wing party. Maybe 30, 40 years ago it was. But there is no liberal out there today that is screaming that everybody sucks. They're sitting out here screaming, vote for the guy that we worship. Or you hate everybody and you want to put people in chains. And furthermore, with Carlin, yes, he did come out and tell the truth about it. It wasn't... And he had some good ideas. I can come back and say that right off the bat. The state prison farms was probably one of the funnier rants off there. And again, that's not a liberal rant. That is, hey, as long as we're doing the thing and imprisoning people, let's make some money off of it. Student loan relief contributing to 27% jump in projected federal budget deficit per CBO. Yeah, who could have seen that coming? Because again, the loans aren't being forgiven. The federal government is taking your taxpayer money and going and dispersing it out to the loan companies. That money didn't disappear. We spend a bunch of money, the deficit goes up. Who could have seen that coming? So this is an op-ed, so this cuts off for a little while, but we at least get the gist of what's happening here. Anti-human eco-brats deface one of the oldest monuments on Earth. From the aforementioned Matt Walsh. Here's a little ancient history that's suddenly become relevant again. 39 years ago this month, just ahead of the summer solstice, the Battle of Beanfield took place in Wiltshire, England. This wasn't a battle in the traditional military sense. It was a violent confrontation between a convoy of around 600 New Age hippies and roughly 1,000 police officers. The officers were there to enforce an injunction preventing the hippies from holding a festival at Stonehenge. That injunction was necessary because 1 year earlier, around 100,000 hippies had caused tens of thousands of dollars in property damage to the trees, fences, and several archaeological artifacts in the area, including Stonehenge itself. So in '85, the authorities understandably wanted to prevent any more hippie carnage from being inflicted on Stonehenge. They set up a roadblock several miles away to turn the New Age travelers away. That's when, according to the BBC, police said they came under attack, being pelted with lumps of wood, stones, and even petrol bombs. And all of this is coming out because the same kind of people went out to this week, just before the summer solstice, and smeared orange paint all over Stonehenge. Now, I am an actual environmentalist. I'm not the kind of person who thinks that we should spend exorbitant amounts of taxpayer money to try to change the weather, as much as I think that you should leave the natural area as well as you found it, as much as you can. Don't litter. Don't damage a bunch of trees. And plant a tree every once in a while. And don't pay the government to do it for you. One of the complaints that came out about this, of course, aside from defacing one of the oldest monuments in history that's still standing to this day, is the fact that there's apparently several endangered species of lichen that live on this rock, on Stonehenge. So now coming back to try to clean this up puts their ecosystem at risk on top of everything else. So you defaced a monument. I was listening to Fedesi earlier, who was talking about the idea that these kids are possibly being put up by the oil companies to turn people away from the environmental movement. Because some of the things that they're doing is so absurd and so detrimental to the actual environment and the environmental movement. But if they are legit, congratulations, you played yourself. And the last one on things that I hate comes from the Florida man himself, which, by the way, if you've noticed on X, a lot of the Biden babies are gone. And now you're getting a lot of these big, especially if you're either a Trump supporter or would unwillingly hold your nose and vote for the guy level of Trump supporter. You're starting to get a lot of the Ron bros again. Because the convictions didn't move the metric anywhere in polling. So now it's time to go back and divide and conquer. But in this, they're all telling you how small government Ron DeSantis is. Well, Ron DeSantis just signed a pretty stupid law into effect if he is really so small government. DeSantis signed Florida food delivery bill into law. Florida man Ron DeSantis signed a bill that gives the state regulatory control over food delivery platforms. Small government right there. While also requiring platforms to have the consent of restaurants before taking orders or arranging deliveries. Which they do. That's why they get to be featured. The measure was one of 11 bills DeSantis signed on Tuesday. Among other things, it will prevent delivery platforms from unilaterally offering prices different from what is listed on restaurant menus. Which of course means that a lot of places like DoorDash can't operate in Florida because they pay their bills off the price difference. The The bill, which would preempt local regulations, was backed during this year's legislative session by groups and businesses such as Florida's Restaurant and Lodging Association, Associated Industries of Florida, and Uber Technologies. Businesses that provide their own food delivery are not affected by the measure. So this was a direct crack against the gig economy, which is why this is on things that I hate. But there were other avenues and aspects to the bill, which I did do a little bit of looking into before we got to this particular point in the show, and they prevent your delivery apps from charging a different price, and they prevent pop-ups and restaurant carts, etc., at festivals and places like that from charging a different price than what their menu is as well. The convenience fee, which I think is stupid. Now, this also cracks down on the local water peddler, somebody who just does go to festivals and provides drinks and snacks and such, where that person can only carry a certain amount in, and if he's offering at normal convenience store pricing, he'll be out of product in about 5 minutes. He'll make a moderate sum of money in those 5 minutes for 5 minutes of work, but he'll be out of product in 5 minutes, and a lot of the people, even the average people, will come back and hoard the stuff because, hey, where else are you going to go and get it in the midst of your festival and other things out? Boy, this sure screams small government, does it? Now, do I think it's right that they gouge the way that they do? I mean, I understand why they do, and I don't go buy from them, but the prices that they're putting out there is between them and the customer. And I'm sure that if 5 or 6 other people came in and started offering a lower price, that would force them to keep their price down, because competition drives a free market. But this is not libertarian, this is not federalist, this is not free market, this is not anything else that the Ron Bros tried to tell me that Ron DeSantis is. And unlike a lot of the Trump supporters, number one, I was against Ron DeSantis before he ran against Trump in 2024, because he liked to govern by executive order in 2018, and I was against him before that because of the executive order thing. But I don't really mind the reverence and sometimes the religious reverence that the Ron Bros have for Ron DeSantis. That's between them, Ron DeSantis, and God, if they want to be religious about the whole thing. But I at least want them to come out and be honest with it. Don't try to sell me on Ron DeSantis because you think that if you scream that he's a federalist, I'll just believe you without fact-checking you, knowing full well that he used his position to fire a locally elected prosecutor that was elected by the people of Palm Beach as a political stunt. That's not federalist. That's the opposite of federalism. Alright, that's all that I have. I'm done. Bog is still here. He gets to see my devil horns one more time, but it's almost 11 o'clock where he lives. Holy shit. You went a long time. Well, I got started a little bit late too, so. No, that's the one I want right there. Yeah, I'll have to put a hat on before I take off for the night. So, outro music. Where are you? There you are. Dial that back a little bit. I don't know why Windows Media Players all of a sudden just started cranking the volume back up here, but well, we'll figure that. It's Microsoft. It's quirky. Anyway, I'm gonna head out of here for the night. The audio platform will be up by morning. The video replay will not be up until tomorrow afternoon, because I do have an appointment that I have to make in Madison in the early morning, so I'm not going to be able to get to that. It's not because of work this time, it's because I've got to leave from here yet tonight and then leave early in the morning for Madison, so that'll be coming up here. But with that being said, you can look for the audio platform on Spotify right away, yet probably before you go to bed tonight. If you would download that at least once or twice, That would be super helpful for me in the algorithm. Otherwise, we'll see you on the replay, or we will see you back here on Thursday on Twitch and Rumble. No YouTube, although we'll come onto YouTube to at least introduce and, get you guys situated and know that and make the announcement that we're coming here. But on Thursday, debate night, we'll be doing a live coverage and commentary on Twitch and Rumble only to avoid all those costly little strikes. So come back and join me for that. Otherwise, back here on Tuesday for more news, more headlines, more contemporary. And we've got Diablo 2 and Fallout Fridays coming up this week as well. Looking forward to seeing you for all of that here. Big changes are coming up hopefully in the near future, so if you want to throw a donation in, that will always be helpful. Of course, a sub, some bits, go hit the subscribe star if I can ever figure out how to withdraw from that. Otherwise, any ways to do that are always going to be helpful. Thank you so much again for watching. We will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, more contemporary, and until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.